up next, we'll hear from Governor Joan Finney of Kansas. She delivered her State of the State address at the Capitol building in Topeka, Kansas on January 22nd. In the speech, the new Democratic governor discussed the programs and initiatives she hoped to carry out in the year ahead.
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of the Kansas Legislature, and people of Kansas. It is with much pleasure and a great sense of responsibility that I appear before the legislature and the people of Kansas to present my first legislative and budget message as governor. Every governor assumes office under unique circumstances, in times that claim their own character, challenges, and opportunities. Today, we worry as a nation about conflict in the Middle East and the safety of our troops deployed there. We worry, and with cause, about economic recession, the growing numbers of homeless, the pervasive use of drugs, the quality of our environment, the national debt, and countless other concerns that affect the welfare of our people. In Kansas, our state's economy has struggled for much of the past decade and now appears to be likely following the national economy into recession. We have serious financial problems in state government. The 1990s, in short, are bringing their own brand of difficulty. But we have seen tough times before. We have answered adversity with a unity of purpose and resolve that transcended our differences. We have always emerged from tough times a stronger people. We will do so again. The message I deliver to you today is not mine alone. It is a message first delivered last November by the people of Kansas. The people of this state want meaningful property tax relief and a more equitable tax structure. They want an end to unchecked growth in government and taxes. They want their government to be open and their public servants to be responsible. I am committed to achieving these goals while meeting the basic human needs of all the people of this state. This is the people's agenda. It is my agenda. I remain committed to the pursuit of tax reform that will provide relief and redress to the property taxpayer. I remain firm in my belief that property tax relief should be achieved by closing tax loopholes, not by increasing tax rates. I am prepared to take bold steps to achieve these goals. I am transmitting to you today a detailed budget recommendation calling for more than $500 million of property tax relief for the people of Kansas by 1993. On this goal, I will not waver. In addition to providing the leadership, the means, and the mechanism for achieving a near 30% property tax reduction by 1993, the budget I present proposes to fund the third and final year of the Margin of Excellence program for our Regents institutions. I propose to continue the ambitious highway development program we embarked upon last year. And I propose to restore and continue the basic service programs of the Department of Social and Rehabilitation Services to meet the fundamental needs of our people. I urge you, the legislature, to place these objectives at the top of your calendar, and that together we produce results. I will work with you. I will be flexible in devising the best possible package to achieve the results I want. But the Kansas people have made it clear. They want action, and they want it this year. If there is to be a tenor, a tone, a trademark of the Finney administration, it will be found in a return to the fundamental notion that in America, government is of the people, by the people, and for the people. I reaffirm my commitment to this ideal by asking for your immediate consideration and approval of 3 constitutional amendments pertaining to public initiative and referendum. As I assumed responsibilities as governor and constructed my first budget, I confirmed that the financial condition of Kansas state government is not good. In Kansas, our economy has struggled for much of the past decade and now appears likely to follow the national economy into recession. State revenue specialists project only 4% growth in state general fund receipts during fiscal 1992. Currently, the state is on a course of deficit spending. For the second consecutive year, general fund expenditures have exceeded revenue collections. Over the 2-year period, the state will have spent some $227 million more from its general fund than it has taken in. We can no longer turn to balances to cover excess spending. Available balances will have been exhausted by the end of fiscal 1991. Our new budget law requires the governor submit a budget based on current fiscal resources and that we keep balances of 5% of expenditures on hand in fiscal 1992. Agency requests for state general fund authorizations totaled $2.9 billion in 1992. That's $430 million more than projected state revenue collections. The time has arrived when we must rethink, re-examine, and reorder our priorities and our concepts of what government should do and what government should be. It is against these realities that I have prepared both a current resources budget to comply with the law and an additional budget that enables me to pursue the priorities and commitments I have made to the people of this state. In addition to the priorities to provide tax relief, fund the margin of excellence, and continue highway and SRS programs, my budget recommends $30.6 million in fiscal 1992 to finance the state employees' pay plan. State government must recognize and value the dedication and skill with which its many thousands of employees conduct the state's business. Leading my fiscal 1992 budget recommendations is a tax reform package that creates the opportunity for a $500 million or 30% reduction in property taxes by 1993. The package restores equity and fairness to our tax system. It provides property tax relief for broadening the base against which the sales tax is applied. The proposed broadening of the sales tax base is projected to generate $478.4 million in revenues in fiscal 1992 and $664 million in fiscal 1993 to help finance property tax relief, the highway program, the margin of excellence, plus necessary SRS programs for the needy and the state employees' pay plan. My proposal eliminates most existing sales tax exemptions and applies the current sales tax rate to most services. It requires that those who buy those goods and services to pay their fair share of sales tax. Whatever merit might once have been attached to excluding these goods and services from sales tax has not withstood the test of time. They are now simply loopholes that must be closed in the best interest of good government and fair and equitable taxation. Because my proposal eliminates the exemption for residential utility sales, I propose a food and utility sales tax rebate program to replace the existing program to prevent hardship for low-income Kansans. Although we live in uncertain economic times and we have no actual experience regarding the revenue-generating effects of broadening the sales tax base, we have used the best information available and made the most conservative assumptions possible to build this budget. As the people of Kansas know, it is not enough for the state to provide the money for property tax relief. We must also provide a mechanism for trying to assure that local governments dedicate these funds to local property tax relief. I encourage all Kansans to be vigilant and to keep close watch on the taxing and spending decisions of local governments. I suggest that the property tax relief funds be returned to local government through the School District Equalization Act and other state aid for education, the School District Ad Valorem Tax Reduction Fund, the Local Ad Valorem Tax Reduction Fund, and county revenue sharing. To reinforce property tax relief efforts, I further recommend a one-year extension in the sunset for the property tax lid. The tax reform measures I have outlined provide the opportunity for immediate relief for the Kansas property taxpayer. The fact remains, however, that our property tax system still contains inherent structural inequities that can be addressed only by amending the constitutional classification system. While I view this as a compelling issue that requires our attention, I also believe that we must proceed with caution. We should act only when we are certain that the actions we take will have the results we intend. Because our times are difficult, some of the revenues generated by broadening the sales tax base must be applied to meet essential state government operations. My budget recommendations for state agencies are very tight, providing for a maintenance level of operation. Agency managers will have to make choices among their priorities. They will have to use imagination and efficiency as alternatives to spending more money. We have a job to do and limited resources with which to do it. We will do what the times and the conditions require. Despite our many problems, we must preserve our conscience and compassion for those who struggle with individual hardship. Certain basic human needs of Kansans must be met. My budget proposes to continue the basic service programs of the Department of Social and Rehabilitation Services. In fiscal 1991, this will require a supplemental appropriation of $16.8 million from the State General Fund to permit continuation of the General Assistance and Medicaid programs. To finance projected medical assistance caseload increases and to meet new federal mandates for prescription drug coverage and veterans in nursing homes. My fiscal 1992 budget for SRS fully restores the $9 per client in monthly cash benefits to recipients under the Aid to Families with Dependent Children and General Assistance programs. My recommendations will permit the state to continue implementing the mental health reform initiatives enacted in 1990, to participate in new federal child care grant programs, to comply with the federal Medicaid expansion mandates, and to meet new federal job training requirements for AFDC clients. I share the concerns about containing cost increases in SRS programs, and I still have under review options for reorganization of SRS functions. I assure you, I have no interest in retreating from the values that make us a caring, enlightened society. We will continue to invest in the welfare of our children, in the care of our sick and our elderly, in the reinforcement of family, and in the development of skills that lead to individual self-reliance. Perhaps our best response to complex challenges and to remaining competitive in an increasingly sophisticated world is a well-educated citizenry. My tax reform proposals include $231 million in new basic state aid to elementary and state secondary education. I propose that school district budget limits be set at 100 to 103%. This allows teacher salary increases averaging 4% and operating budget increases averaging 4.5% for most districts. Some districts will be able to do better. Further, I recommend that special education be funded at $128.4 million. I have recommended $23.7 million to fund the third and final year of the Margin of Excellence for Regents institutions. For community colleges, my budget proposes 5% growth in credit hour aid of $2.6 million. I also recommend the state assume all out-district tuition costs for community colleges over a 2-year period. And while I support the eventual entry of Washburn University into the state's Regent system, I do not believe the state can afford to take this step at this time. I do recommend that the state operating grant for Washburn University be increased by $1.1 million to a total of $7.1 million in state aid. In times of fiscal difficulty, state government must establish as much flexibility as possible in budgeting and meeting its fiscal obligations. Accordingly, I recommend 2 major changes in current dedication of revenues. First, I recommend that transfers from the State Gaming Revenue Fund to the Economic Development Initiatives Fund be eliminated. I recommend that 40% of State Gaming Fund proceeds be dedicated to capital improvements and the remaining 60% be transferred directly to the State General Fund. Secondly, I recommend that the fiscal 1992 State General Fund contribution to the State Water Plan Fund be set at $3 million. The effect of both proposals is to make funds available for general expenditure that are now available only for limited purposes. Projects previously funded from dedicated revenues will be eligible for continued support. Their merits, however, will be weighed against competing requests for general fund expenditures. My recommendation for state employees include funds for step movement in pay of approximately 2.5% of base wages and a 1.5% cost of living raise in the last half of fiscal 1992. I also recommend continuation of longevity bonuses. I continue to be concerned about the impact of health care premiums on state employees' salaries, and I direct the Kansas State Employees Health Care Commission to give priority attention to this issue. In this message, I have discussed only the major features of my budget proposals. My recommendations also address many other important issues. I have recommended constitutional amendments to include the state treasurer and the insurance commissioner as constitutional officers, and the reestablishment of the state auditor authorized by statute and Constitution. I have recommended many other important issues. I have recommended constitutional amendments to include the state treasurer and the insurance commissioner as constitutional officers, and the reestablishment of the state auditor authorized by statute and Constitution. I have recommended continuation of the state highway program as previously approved level. I have also addressed construction cost overruns and operating budgets for the 2 new correctional facilities that will open during the next year. I propose reorganization that will transfer functions of the Kansas Technology Enterprise Corporation to the Department of Commerce, and a delay in the schedule for construction of the Center for Historical Research building. Additionally, I have suggested adjustments to the sources and level of financing for implementation of the state water plan. Over the course of this year, we will undertake a full-scale review of state government. I am pleased and excited to announce today a new partnership between state government and our Regents universities. Our universities have agreed to become full and active participants in the comprehensive review of the state and its future that I believe is so necessary. These universities have been tapped only intermittently in the solution of practical state problems. We hope to apply the institution's substantial resources to achieve the economic and social changes necessary to move the state of Kansas forward in a visionary manner. Before I close my address, I would like to share with you some observations. It was 100 years ago this month, after a startling display of political independence on the part of Kansas voters, that the People's Party of Kansas gained control of the Kansas House of Representatives. 2 years later, the state's first populist governor was sworn into office. In his inaugural address, Governor Llewellyn urged, quote, "a spirit of sympathy for those who struggle and an awakening to the questions and responsibility of citizenship," unquote. The Kansas of today is in many ways a very different place from the Kansas that gave root and nourishment to the Populist Party. The times are different. The issues are different. But the character and the courage of our people, their spirit of political independence, and their willingness to assert themselves have thankfully endured. We will each strive to be the best that we can be, because in bringing out the best in every Kansan, we will bring out the best in Kansas. I ask that together we restore fairness to taxation, that we return control of government to the people and to the people of Kansas. I thank you for your support, for your vote, for your cherished trust that you have given me. In my endeavors as governor, I now ask for your prayers.
Be sure to join us this weekend on C-SPAN, our companion network, for live coverage of the winter meeting of the National Governors Association. On Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, the National Education Goals Panel will meet. Then on Sunday, beginning at 8 a.m., we'll be live all day with NGA committee meetings, interviews with governors, and live call-in programs. Stay with us now for the Maryland State of the State Address.
The C-SPAN networks are brought to you as a public service of the cable television industry.